My child, the moment you have been waiting for has arrived. Not the moment you tried to force into existence through your own strength, and not the hour you imagined would come on your schedule, but the moment that was appointed before the foundations of the earth were laid. I have watched you through every part of the journey, and I have seen how you held on, even when everything around you seemed to unravel. I saw the nights when doubt entered your heart like a cold wind, when you wondered whether I had forgotten your name, or whether your prayers were reaching anything beyond an empty ceiling. But hear me clearly now, I have not forgotten you. I never did. Every word you whispered during those quiet and painful hours reached me, and every tear that fell, when no one else could see it, was known to me. I was closer than you realized, even in the moments when my presence seemed hidden. What you are hearing now is not simply another message passing through your ears. It is a call to recognize that the season of waiting is beginning to change. You have wondered whether you would always remain at the edge of the promise, watching other people receive what you had prayed for, while your own hands seemed empty. But the waiting was never meaningless. Every day between the promise and its fulfillment was doing something within you that could not have been built overnight. What felt like delay was also preparation, shaping your endurance, your trust, and your ability to carry what was ahead. And now a door stands before you. It is not a small door leading to a minor adjustment in your circumstances. It represents a passage between the life you have known and the life you believe I have been preparing for you. That door is open, and you do not have to force it. What I open cannot simply be closed by another voice, and what I have determined cannot be silenced by opposition. But before you walk through, there is something you must understand. You cannot carry everything from yesterday into tomorrow. You have spent years carrying burdens that were never yours to carry, because you love deeply, because you feel responsible, and because you have often chosen to carry the weight of others alongside your own. Yet I am asking you now to put those weights down, not because carrying them made you weak, but because you were meant to move forward rather than remain bent beneath burdens that belong in my hands. The things you have depended on for security may not all belong in the next season either. Some arrangements, habits, and attachments have become so familiar that you cannot imagine moving forward without them. But trust me with the empty spaces they leave behind. You do not need to enter the future with your hands tightly closed around the past. I am calling you forward with open hands, ready to receive what comes next. Think about the servant who heard my voice during the stillness of the night. At first, he did not recognize who was calling him. He went to another person, believing the voice had come from somewhere else, and he misunderstood the call more than once. But eventually he turned his heart toward me and became willing to listen. That simple posture of availability changed everything. I am not asking you for perfection, I am asking you to turn toward me and say with sincerity, I am here and I am listening. When you become willing to listen, what once seemed silent can become clear, and what once seemed distant can feel closer than your own breath. I know how tired you are. I have watched you stand through circumstances that could have broken many people, and I have seen you choose trust when bitterness would have been easier. I saw you rise again when staying down would have required less effort. That resilience was not something you created entirely by yourself. I have been sustaining you through every step. None of those steps were wasted. They brought you to this moment, to this threshold, and to this conversation. What is opening before you is not a prize for having performed perfectly. It is not something you earned simply because you endured long enough. It is presented as an expression of grace, flowing from a love that has remained constant. So do not believe that the door is opening because you finally managed to get everything right. It is opening because I am faithful, and because the appointed time has come. What lies ahead is described as more than a small improvement. It is a change capable of making you look back one day and wonder how your life became so different from what it once was. There were seasons when everything seemed to be closing around you. The path disappeared into fog, your options narrowed, and you felt as though you had nowhere left to turn. Yet even during those moments, the work was already beginning. The fog was not proof of absence. It was part of what remained hidden until the right time. Now the fog begins to lift. What was being prepared in the unseen is beginning to become visible. And what was being held back for its proper moment is described as being released. The invitation is simple. Cross the threshold with your whole heart. Your faith does not have to feel perfect. Even a trembling yes is still a yes, but before you walk through that open door, you must release what cannot come with you. First, release resentment. I know the people who hurt you. The ones who walked away when you needed them, and the words that wounded you deeply. I am not asking you to pretend those wounds never happened. I am asking you to stop allowing the pain to keep your heart chained to the past. Resentment does not imprison the person who hurt you nearly as much as it imprisons the person who continues carrying it. Give the account of what happened to me. Release your grip on it and allow justice to remain in my hands. Then release guilt as well. The mistakes you replay, the words you wish you could take back, and the decisions you still regret. You were never meant to carry yesterday's failures forever. And finally, release fear. Fear of failing again, fear of hoping only to be disappointed, fear of what people will say, and fear of the unknown road ahead can sound convincing. But fear does not get to determine the direction of your life. Do not let the loudest voice become the truest voice. There will also be people who do not understand the changes taking place in you. Some may question them, reduce them, or quietly distance themselves. That may hurt, but you cannot remain trapped by the need for everyone else to approve of where you are going. Some relationships belong to one season, while others will grow with you into the next. What you must carry through the door is different. Bring your faith, even if it feels small. Bring gratitude before you see everything you have hoped for. Bring a willingness to obey even when you do not yet understand the instruction. When you are told to go, go. When you are told to wait, wait. And when you are called to give, give with trust rather than fear. Because this new season is not presented as something meant only for you. What is placed in your hands is meant to flow through you as well. Your transformation can become a testimony for people who are still waiting, still struggling, and still wondering whether their own story can change. What happens next is therefore not only about what you receive, but about who you become and what others may learn when they see the difference. There is something else you need to understand. Before you move forward, the blessing coming into your life is not meant to end with you. It is meant to flow through you. What you are stepping into is not simply about comfort, accumulation, or finally getting everything you wanted. It is about becoming a living testimony of what can happen when faith survives the waiting, and when your story becomes a reason for someone else to believe again. Your life will speak to people who may never hear the same words you have heard. Someone will see what has changed in you and begin to wonder whether their own situation can change too. Someone who has almost stopped believing may hear your story and find enough courage to hope again. That is why what you have walked through matters beyond yourself. The struggles, losses, and seasons of uncertainty have been shaping something that can eventually encourage others. Now begin to think differently about what is coming. The miracles ahead are not described as one isolated event that changes everything for a single moment. They are presented as a chain, where one door opens and reveals another. Where one victory creates room for the next, and where one breakthrough prepares the ground for something greater. When movement begins, it does not have to stop at the first sign of change. For a long time, Sky, you have imagined what your life might look like if things finally changed. You have carried those pictures quietly inside yourself, Sky, sometimes allowing yourself to dream and sometimes pushing those dreams away because hoping seemed too dangerous. Yet the desires for peace, purpose, provision, restoration, Sky, and meaningful connection are presented as seeds that have been growing beneath the surface. Now you are being asked to expect rather than simply hope, Sky. There is a difference between saying that perhaps things will improve and preparing yourself as though the promise you have been waiting for is actually approaching. Expectation changes the way you speak, Sky, the way you think, and the way you prepare. It does not mean arrogance or pretending that you already see everything clearly. It means moving with a quiet confidence that you know whose voice you are trusting. Sky, make room for what you have been asking for. Begin speaking about your future differently, not because words magically control everything, but because your perspective matters. Sky, prepare your heart to receive instead of constantly preparing yourself for disappointment. The invitation is to act from trust rather than from the assumption that everything will go wrong. Sky, there is also a call to place something of real weight on the altar of this work, something you genuinely possess and are willing to release as an expression of trust. It is described as a seed planted in faith, Sky, an offering that demonstrates that your confidence is no longer rooted entirely in what you can hold on to yourself. What you release in faith is not presented as something meaningless or lost, Sky. It moves ahead of you toward the harvest you are being prepared to receive. But the transformation ahead is not only about what changes around you, it is also about what changes within you, Sky. A genuine transformation changes the way you think, the way you see yourself, the way you understand the world, and the way you understand God, Sky. Patterns of thinking that have kept you small for years can begin to lose their power. The beliefs that told you this was all your life could ever become may begin to fall away, Sky. Problems that once looked like walls can begin to look like possible doorways, while situations that once felt like endings can begin to look like beginnings, Sky. That shift in perspective is itself described as one of the most powerful changes taking place inside you. And you do not need to arrive at this door with every problem solved, Sky. Your weakness does not limit divine strength. In fact, the message emphasizes that power is most clearly seen in the places where your own ability reaches its limit. You do not have to heal every wound, Sky, answer every question, or understand every detail before you are allowed to move forward. Come as you are. Bring what you have, because the limitations you see in yourself are already known, Sky. You are not surprising God with your weaknesses, your uncertainty, or the areas where you still struggle. The plan being described already accounts for those limitations, Sky. There is an ancient account of a king whose forces were surrounded and whose situation was beyond what human strength could solve. His response was simple. He admitted that he did not know what to do, Sky, but that his eyes were fixed on God. In that moment of surrender, the battle was decided in the unseen before the outcome became visible. That same principle is being applied here, Sky. You do not have to know every step ahead of time. You only have to know where to look. Fix your attention on God and allow that trust to replace the pressure to control every outcome yourself, Sky. There are things already being described as moving into position. Doors that may open without being forced. People whose paths may cross yours, and provision arriving from directions you did not expect, Sky. The message repeatedly returns to the idea that what looks impossible from one perspective does not have to remain impossible forever. The promises being spoken over your life are described as still standing. Sky. None have expired and none have been forgotten. The coming season is portrayed as one in which several things may begin changing in rapid succession. Sky. Creating a visible difference between the life you are leaving behind and the life you are entering. You were never meant to define your entire existence by survival. The vision presented here is larger than simply making it through one difficulty after another. It speaks of abundance in peace, purpose, joy, and meaning, not as a reward for perfect behavior, but as an expression of a love that has remained constant. And that brings the message to something even deeper, your identity. Many of the struggles you have carried may have begun not with circumstances themselves, but with beliefs about who you are somewhere along the way. Voices may have told you that you were not capable enough, worthy enough, lovable enough, or strong enough, until those labels began to feel like truth. But those voices do not get the final word. The message insists that your identity is not determined by the people who criticized you, rejected you, misunderstood you, or placed limitations on you. It is determined by the one who formed you and knows you completely. You are described as deeply valued, specifically chosen, and uniquely created with a purpose that no one else can fulfill. You are not a copy of another person, and you are not a lesser version of someone else. Your experiences, qualities, abilities, and struggles have all been woven into a story that is still unfolding. When God looks at you, the message says, your mistakes are not the first thing he sees. He sees the person he loves and has continued working with through every season. He sees someone whose story is far from finished, and someone who may be more prepared for what lies ahead than they realize. You have sometimes tried to earn your place through performance, believing that if you could simply become better, stronger, or more deserving, you would finally receive the love and attention you wanted. But the message makes a different claim. Divine love is not presented as something that increases when you perform well or disappears when you fail. That realization is what allows you to stop striving and begin receiving. It allows you to trust without constantly gripping for control, and to move forward without being crushed by the fear that you will never measure up. And after everything you have given to others, the message turns toward one final invitation for this part of the journey. Open your hands, because now it is your season to receive. The transformation I am bringing into your life will not only change what you can see on the outside, it will also touch the hidden places within you. The places where hope became numb, where dreams were buried, and where disappointment taught you to stop expecting too much. Those places are beginning to stir again, and what returns will not be the fragile hope that collapses the moment something becomes difficult. It will be a deeper kind of hope, one that can remain steady even when the answer takes longer than expected. You are not starting from behind. The years that felt lost, the timing that seemed wrong, and the waiting that looked like wasted time did not place you permanently behind everyone else. The message insists that every thread of your story belongs to a larger design, including the threads that look like mistakes or dead ends. While you could only see one small section, God is described as seeing the entire pattern. One of the results of that understanding is a different kind of joy. This is not presented as shallow happiness that depends on everything going perfectly. It is a settled gladness rooted in knowing that you are held, known, loved, and purposeful. Because it is rooted in something deeper than circumstances. It can remain present even when circumstances become difficult again. That is part of what you are being invited to carry through the open door. So stand a little straighter in your spirit. You are not merely someone trying to survive from one problem to another. Sky, you are being reminded that your life has purpose, and that the chapter opening before you is one you are meant to enter with expectation rather than constant fear. Sky. But receiving a miracle and learning how to live inside a changed season are two different things. When circumstances begin to shift after years of familiar struggle, Sky, your mind may not immediately know how to respond. You have become accustomed to the old patterns, the old rhythms, and the old definition of what is possible. Because of that, Sky, there may be moments when something good happens, and part of you immediately questions it. You may wonder whether it is real, whether it can last, or whether something must eventually go wrong. Sky. When those thoughts appear, do not automatically explain away what is happening. Receive the good with gratitude, give praise, and allow the evidence of faithfulness to become part of your understanding. As you see things work out in ways you could not have arranged yourself, your trust can become stronger. Faith that has been tested is different from faith that has never been stretched. The new season is therefore not only giving you circumstances to celebrate, it is also building something stronger inside you. There will also be opposition. The message does not describe the new season as a path without difficulty. Instead, it warns that resistance may appear through unexpected circumstances, distractions, complications, or even people who seem reasonable on the surface. But opposition does not automatically mean that something has gone wrong. The message presents resistance as something that can occur precisely when a person is moving toward something significant. Therefore, when difficulty appears after progress begins, do not immediately assume that the door was never meant to open. Stand firm and keep your attention on God. The instruction is not to become obsessed with the opposition, but to refuse to let it determine your direction. What has been decreed cannot be stopped simply because the path becomes complicated. And once again, the message returns to the idea that your miracle is not only for you. Everything you have experienced, the trials, losses, difficult seasons, and moments when you had to depend on God more deeply, has been forming something that can eventually help another person. There will be people who look at your life and begin to believe that God's promises can still be trusted. Others may hear your story and find enough courage to hope for their own situation. Even people you have carried quietly in prayer may be strengthened when they see what happens in your life. That is why your testimony matters. What you receive should not make you forget the people who are still waiting. Instead, it should make you more generous with what has been placed in your hands. Because your story may become part of someone else's reason to keep believing. The message then turns toward a deeper question. What does faith actually mean? Many people assume faith means feeling completely certain, as though the presence of doubt automatically proves that faith is absent. But the message presents faith differently. It is a choice made while uncertainty is still present. Faith means deciding to trust what has been spoken even when the visible evidence has not caught up with it. It is the ability to say, I do not see the entire picture yet, but I trust the one who does. That kind of faith does not require having every answer before taking the next step. The example of Abraham is used to illustrate this. He believed when he was called toward a land he could not yet see, and he held on to the promise of a son even when natural circumstances appeared to contradict it. His faith was not described as an effortless journey without waiting or uncertainty. Rather, it was a continued decision to trust. That is the kind of faith being requested from you now, Not the faith of someone who has solved every mystery, but the faith of someone who knows where the answers are and chooses to trust anyway. When that kind of trust takes root, situations that once appeared immovable can begin to look different. The message describes mountains shifting, locked situations opening, and circumstances that seemed impossible becoming possible. The point is not that human effort becomes unnecessary, but that your perspective is no longer limited only to what can be calculated from the circumstances directly in front of you. I begin speaking from that place of trust. Speak peace over your household, provision over your needs, purpose over your days, and hope over the people you love. These words are presented not as empty statements, but as declarations grounded in the promises you believe. This becomes part of what the message calls a new normal. And in that new normal, you are not walking alone. God's presence is described as close rather than distant, present in prayer, present when the path changes, present when life becomes noisy, and present when the journey becomes harder than expected. You do not have to manage the entire season by yourself. The message repeatedly emphasizes companionship, guidance, comfort, and peace, reminding you that the future is not something you must carry entirely through your own strength. But there is another responsibility: protecting what you receive. The message explains that some people experience a breakthrough and eventually lose sight of its significance. Not because God took it away, but because old patterns gradually returned. The same thoughts that once diminished them began speaking again, and eventually the miracle that once seemed extraordinary began to feel ordinary. That is why gratitude is presented as the first protection. Genuine gratitude keeps you aware of what has changed and helps you recognize goodness not only in extraordinary moments, but also in ordinary ones. It prevents blessings from becoming so familiar that you forget what life looked like before they arrived. Remember the contrast. Remember what you once prayed for, what you once feared would never change, and what you once considered impossible. Allow those memories to keep your gratitude sincere, rather than allowing new blessings to become something you simply expect. The second protection is obedience. Not reluctant compliance or doing the minimum required, but responding because you genuinely want to remain aligned with God. When you sense an instruction to move, move. When something needs to change, allow it to change. And when an unexpected door opens, walk through it with trust. The message describes obedience not as a restriction meant to reduce joy, but as the environment in which life functions according to its intended design. It becomes the soil in which what has been given can continue to grow. The third protection is staying connected to God. Not only when you are desperate, not only when you need an answer, but during ordinary hours and ordinary days. Seek God because you want to know Him, not merely because you need something from Him. When you read Scripture, the message encourages you to read it to know God more deeply, rather than simply searching for the next instruction. When you pray, approach it as a genuine relationship, rather than a formal request directed towards someone distant. The closer you remain, the more grounded you become in the season you have entered. And then there is the question of relationships. Not everyone from your previous season will necessarily travel with you into the next one. Some relationships were exactly right for the person you were becoming at that time, but growth can change what a relationship requires. Some people will grow with you. Their roots are deep enough to survive change, and those relationships may become even stronger as your life develops. Hold those people carefully, because relationships that can grow alongside genuine transformation are valuable. Others, however, may struggle with your development. They may feel threatened by changes in you, or attempt to pull you back toward the familiar version of yourself that was easier for them to understand. You cannot allow someone else's discomfort to become the ceiling of your growth. That does not mean becoming cold or dismissive. It means remaining clear about who you are becoming and where you are going. Love people, pray for them, and care about them, but do not surrender your direction simply because your growth makes someone else uncomfortable. At the same time, the message describes new connections beginning to form. These are people whose faith, purpose, and outlook may align with the direction you are growing toward. They may challenge you to believe more deeply, Guy, dream more widely, and trust more completely. When those connections arrive, they may feel different from what you have known before. Instead of requiring you to shrink yourself to be accepted, Guy, they may draw out what is strongest and healthiest in you. These relationships are described as part of the design of the new season, Guy. And the promise at the center of this message remains larger than what you can currently calculate. The scripture is invoked that God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above what can be asked or imagined, Guy. The invitation is therefore not to place an artificial ceiling on what you believe is possible, simply because human reasoning cannot yet explain how it could happen. Reach beyond the limits created by fear. Ask, Guy. Believe, prepare, and remain open to the possibility that what comes may exceed the version you originally imagined. The new season is not only about receiving more, Guy. It is about becoming someone capable of recognizing, protecting, and sharing what has been received. My beloved child, we have come a long way in this conversation, and now I want to bring you toward a place of rest. Guy. Not the rest of someone who has surrendered their hope, Guy, but the rest of someone who has finally put down a heavy burden after carrying it for a long time and understands that they do not have to keep holding everything alone. You have spent enough time striving, waiting, Guy, questioning, and trying to hold yourself together. Let this be the moment when you breathe deeply and allow something new to fill the space that exhaustion has occupied. Guy. I know one of the deepest thoughts that has troubled you. Perhaps the delay meant abandonment. You prayed, waited, believed, and watched the circumstances remain unchanged. The longer it continued, Guy, the easier it became to wonder whether I had turned away, whether your words were disappearing into silence, or whether the promise you were holding on to had somehow passed you by. Guy. But silence was never the same as absence. Slowness was never indifference. While you were waiting for something to change in the visible world, the message says that movement was already taking place in the unseen. Guy. Foundations were being established, roots were going deeper, and things were being prepared that could not yet be recognized from where you were standing. Guy. Think about the account of the man who had been sick for 38 years. 38 years is not a short delay. It represents an entire generation of waiting. Yet when Jesus came to him, Guy, he did not say that the opportunity had passed because too much time had gone by. He asked whether he wanted to be made well, and then the change happened immediately. Guy. That story becomes a reminder that the length of a waiting season does not determine the limits of what can happen next. Something can take years to develop and still change in a moment. Guy, what seemed permanently broken can be restored, and what appeared to have been lost beyond recovery can become new again, so do not measure what is possible by how long you have already waited. Guy, human calculations cannot determine divine timing. The message presents God as one who sees the end from the beginning, who is never surprised by the details of your story, Guy, and who has never been caught off guard by the situation you are facing. That means the coming change does not need to be forced through anxiety, Guy. You do not have to make something happen simply because you are afraid the opportunity will disappear. If the appointed moment has arrived, you can move forward with trust rather than desperation. Guy, there may soon be moments when gratitude rises inside you so quickly that you hardly know what to do with it. A provision may arrive at exactly the right moment. An encouraging word may come when you need it most. Guy, a relationship may begin to heal after you had quietly accepted that it would never be repaired. Or an opportunity may appear in an area that seemed completely closed. When those moments come, do not rush past them. Guy, let yourself recognize what has happened. Do not immediately explain it away or treat it as though it were nothing special. Sky. Allow gratitude and wonder to settle deeply within you so that the memory of faithfulness becomes part of the way you see the future. And when another difficult day eventually comes, Sky, remember what you have already seen. Life will not become completely free of difficulty simply because a new season begins. There will still be hard days and unexpected challenges, but the memory of what happened before can become an anchor when circumstances become turbulent again. This is why testimony matters. Remembering what God has done is not presented as a meaningless religious exercise. It becomes a practical way of keeping faith rooted. What happened before becomes evidence that another difficult moment does not automatically mean the story is over. Your circumstances may change, but the character described in this message does not. Divine love is not presented as something that disappears when life becomes uncomfortable. It remains constant even when the path becomes difficult, and that consistency becomes the foundation for trust. You are not at the end of your story. You are standing in one of its significant chapters, and the decisions made during this season may become the moments you later recognize as turning points. They will not necessarily be the moments when everything was already obvious. They may be the moments when you chose to trust before you had complete clarity. That is where genuine faith becomes visible. It is easy to believe after everything has worked out, and the evidence is sitting directly in front of you. The deeper choice is believing while the outcome is still uncertain. Taking the next step while some questions remain unanswered. So do not leave this moment unchanged. Allow something that had become settled in the wrong direction to become unsettled again. If your heart had closed because of disappointment, let it begin opening. If fear had convinced you that nothing could change, make room for another possibility. The message asks you to let these words take root beyond the surface of your thoughts. Water them through remembrance, strengthen them through what you say, and protect them by choosing trust repeatedly. A single moment of inspiration is not enough. What matters is allowing that decision to become part of the way you live, and above everything else, remember the love at the center of this message. It is described as a love without an edge or an ending, a love that is actively working rather than standing at a distance. Even in moments when you feel nothing, the message says that God is still present in both the visible and unseen parts of your life. You belong to Him and He remains with you. The message presents that relationship as the foundation from which everything else can be faced. Uncertainty, opposition, change, loss, opportunity, and whatever the future brings. You do not have to understand every part of the road before you begin walking it. Now, as you step into the new season, remember that receiving what you have prayed for is only part of the journey. Learning how to carry it, protect it, and remain grateful for it will require a different kind of maturity. The breakthrough itself may be powerful, but the person you become afterward is equally important. Do not allow success to make you forget dependence. Do not allow comfort to make you forget gratitude. Do not allow a new environment to make you abandon the values that carried you through the old one. The same closeness to God that sustained you during the waiting is needed after the waiting ends. There may be moments when the new life feels unfamiliar. You may have spent so long expecting disappointment that peace itself feels strange. You may have become so accustomed to fighting for every small improvement that receiving something good without constant struggle makes you wonder whether it can really last. When that happens, do not sabotage what is good simply because it feels unfamiliar. Give yourself permission to receive. Let your mind slowly adjust to the reality that not every door has to close. Not every relationship has to end badly, and not every opportunity has to disappear before you can enjoy it. At the same time, remain grounded. The message does not promise a life where nothing difficult ever happens again. Instead, it describes a deeper confidence that can survive difficulty without immediately collapsing into hopelessness. Guy. The difference is not that challenges disappear, but that you no longer face them from the same place inside yourself. You have been changed by the waiting. Guy. The person who stands at the threshold is not exactly the same person who first began praying for the door to open. You have learned endurance, dependence, discernment, Guy, and the cost of carrying things that were never yours. Now those lessons can become part of the foundation for what comes next. The waiting did not merely delay the future, Guy. It helped prepare the person who would eventually enter it. And so, when you finally look back, you may understand something that was impossible to see in the middle of the struggle, Guy. The moments you thought were interruptions may have been preparation. The closed doors may have redirected you. The silence may have taught you to listen more carefully, Guy. The delay may have developed roots that could support the fruit you were asking for. That is why the message asks you not to despise the road that brought you here, Guy. You do not have to love every painful moment or pretend that everything was easy. But you can recognize that your story contains more than the difficulty you remember. There is a larger picture still unfolding. Guy. You have seen only individual threads, but the finished design is described as something you will eventually understand more clearly. What seemed disconnected may begin to make sense when you see where it was leading, Guy. So keep walking, keep your hands open, keep your heart receptive, and when the next door opens, do not stand outside analyzing it forever, because the previous doors taught you to expect disappointment. Guy, the invitation is not to become careless or naive. It is to become willing to trust again, willing to receive again, willing to believe that the future does not have to repeat the past. Guy, your new season is therefore not simply a change in circumstances. It is a change in how you approach life itself. You are being invited to move from constant survival toward purposeful living, Guy, from fear toward trust. From carrying everything alone toward allowing God to carry what you were never designed to hold. And the most important thing you can take with you is not certainty about every detail, Guy. It is the conviction that you are not walking into the unknown alone. Whatever the next chapter contains, the message insists that divine presence goes before you, remains beside you, Guy, and continues working even when you cannot yet see the result. My beloved child, we have walked a long road together, and now I want to bring you to a place of rest. Guy, not the rest of someone who has surrendered in defeat, but the rest of someone who has finally put down a heavy burden after a long journey, and knows that the place they have reached is good. You have been striving, Guy, waiting, carrying, and holding on for a long time, and now you are being invited to breathe deeply and allow something new to fill the space that exhaustion once occupied. Guy, I know there is a lie that has returned to your heart more than once, the belief that delay meant abandonment. You prayed and nothing seemed to change, Guy. You waited while the circumstances around you continued to contradict what you believed, and eventually the silence began to feel like rejection. But the message is clear. Silence was never the same as absence, Guy, and slowness was never proof of indifference. While you were waiting, things were still being prepared in ways you could not see. The roots had to grow deeper before the fruit could appear, Guy, and the foundation had to be established before the building could rise. What looked like inactivity from your perspective could still contain movement in places beyond your sight, Guy. Think about the account of the man who had been sick for 38 years. 38 years is an enormous amount of time, long enough for an entire generation to pass, and yet when I came to him, Guy, I did not tell him that his opportunity had expired. I asked him whether he wanted to be made well, and then the change happened immediately. That story reminds you that the length of your waiting does not determine the limits of what can happen next. What took years to develop can be changed in a moment, and what appeared permanently broken can be restored. Do not calculate your future only by measuring how much time has already passed. From the perspective of eternity, the entire story is visible at once. Nothing about your circumstances has surprised God, and nothing in your history has caught him unprepared. What is approaching may feel sudden to you, but it has never been sudden to the one who sees the beginning and the end together. There may soon be moments when gratitude rises within you so quickly that you hardly know how to express it. Provision may arrive at precisely the right moment. Encouragement may come from an unexpected person. A relationship may begin healing after you had quietly decided it could never be repaired. Or an opportunity may appear where you once saw only a closed door. When those moments come, do not rush past them. Let yourself recognize the goodness in them. Do not immediately explain them away or move on to the next concern. Allow gratitude and wonder to become part of your memory, because those memories can become anchors when another difficult season eventually arrives. Life will not become completely free of challenges. There will still be hard days and unexpected circumstances. But the memory of what has already happened can strengthen you when the future becomes uncertain again. Remember the doors that opened, the moments when help arrived, and the times when what seemed impossible changed. This is why testimony matters. It is not simply a religious exercise or something to repeat because you are expected to say it. Remembering what has happened helps keep faith rooted in reality. What was done before can become evidence that trust was not misplaced, and what was promised in one season does not suddenly lose its meaning when another season begins. Your story is not finished. In fact, this moment is described as one of its most significant chapters. The decisions you make now, the trust you choose when clarity has not yet arrived, and the steps you take while uncertainty remains may become the very moments you later recognize as turning points. The greatest moments of faith are not always the moments when everything is obvious. Sometimes they are the moments when you cannot yet see the whole path and still choose to move forward. Those decisions build a kind of character that remains valuable regardless of what circumstances come next. So do not leave this moment unchanged. Let something that has been closed inside you begin to open. Let something that has been moving in the wrong direction become unsettled. And allow the words you have heard to move deeper than your surface thoughts. Remember them. Speak them, protect them by choosing trust when fear becomes loud. The goal is not simply to hear an encouraging message for a few minutes, but to allow it to influence the place inside you where real decisions are made. You are loved with a love that has no edge and no end. The message does not describe that love as distant or passive, but as something actively present in both the visible and unseen parts of your life. Even in moments when you do not feel that presence, the message insists that you are not forgotten. You are being called to step forward without needing to understand every detail first. You do not have to carry every burden into the future, and you do not have to solve every question before taking the next step. The door has been opened, and the invitation is to trust enough to walk through it. So release what belongs to yesterday. Release resentment, guilt, fear, and the need for everyone around you to understand. Carry faith, gratitude, obedience, and an open heart instead. Let the past remain where it belongs, while you move toward what has been prepared ahead. And remember that the blessing is not only about what you receive, it is about who you become through the process, and how your transformation may affect others. Your story can become encouragement for someone who is still waiting. Your testimony can awaken hope in someone who has almost given up. And your faith can point beyond yourself to the one you believe has carried you this far. The new season, then, is not simply a promise of easier circumstances. It is an invitation into deeper trust, stronger faith, greater gratitude, meaningful relationships, and a clearer understanding of your identity and purpose. You are being reminded that your past does not have the authority to define your future. Stand up in your spirit and move forward. You do not need perfect faith. You only need the willingness to trust with the faith you have today. Even if that faith trembles, even if you still have questions, a sincere yes is still a step forward. Let your final response be simple. Lord, I trust you with everything I cannot yet see. Then walk forward with that trust. The door is open, the waiting has not been wasted. And the story is not ending here. It is entering another chapter.